questions, trying to address the COVID crisis, but also address problems he had long wanted to solve. Outdated infrastructure in our country, the need to do more for the climate. Those were clear questions. That's what they were trying to do. In every case, and more cases than those, presidents identified problems that were impacting huge, broad swaths of the country. And then they worked with Congress to try to solve them. Which brings me to a big, unanswered question about Donald Trump's big, ugly bill, which now heads to his desk after passing by the narrowest of margins this afternoon. What exactly is the problem this legislation is trying to solve? What exactly did Donald Trump and his team sit in a room and think, you know what, we have two houses of Congress, we have the White House, we're going to try to solve this big problem? Republicans have never even tried to answer that question. Not coherently, at least. But looking what is in the bill, repeated theory that Donald Trump is somehow a champion of working people. I mean, we have all. But now, with his signature legislation headed to his desk, there should be no doubt. Trump is no populist. A populist doesn't kick 17 million people off their health care coverage. Populist doesn't take food stamps away from millions of people. Populist doesn't fund a massive immigration enforcement army with a budget bigger than many of the world's militaries. And a populist definitely doesn't do all of that while also giving over $4 trillion in tax cuts to corporations and the wealthiest people in the entire country. This is Donald Trump's signature piece of legislation. It's the chance he had, as president, to solve a problem in this country at a time when, by the way, real problems need a lot of solving. Many people who voted for him were betting he was going to do something to help them. And yet those are the people who voted for him, who sent him to the Oval Office, many of whom will be hit the hardest by this legislation. I mean, Trump made huge electoral gains in counties with lots of voters on Medicaid, probably in part because he explicitly pledged never to cut Medicaid. Well, he just broke that promise to all those voters. And some of them don't even know it yet. Some of them still have no idea what Trump and Republicans in Congress have just done. Polling shows that many Americans have not even heard about this giant bill at all. And of those who have, only a sliver know it includes Medicaid cuts. And that is definitely a challenge for Democrats. And we're going to talk about that with a few of my guests tonight, because it kind of is the question now. But here's the thing. The more people learn about what is in this bill, the less they like the bill and all the components of it. And the people who do know what is in the bill are pissed.
In Danville today, people voiced their frustration with President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. Say Medicaid! Loud and clear across the street from their congressman's office.
Dozens gathered outside Representative David Valadeo's office. Their message to the congressman: vote no on what the protesters call deadly cuts to health care.
Protesters tonight on Dodge Street pleading for Nebraska's representatives to have a change of heart. Frustration mounts as a massive federal budget bill hits the House floor.
In congressional districts all across Georgia Tuesday, constituents demonstrated against President Trump's spending bill.
The organization of Monday's Stop the Billionaire giveaway bus tour says those in favor of this bill aren't looking at its harmful effects to the greater population, such as Medicaid restrictions, food assistance, and rollback tax credits on clean energy.
Everything you just saw, that package of protests across the country from all over the place, is just from the past 3 days. And there were more. Protesters showed up in Tucson outside the office of Republican Congressman Juan Kiscomani and outside Republican Congresswoman Young Kim's office in Anaheim. In Staten Island, protesters held what they called a die-in, that's what they called it, outside the offices of Republican Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis. They brought homemade tombstones representing the lives impacted by Trump's big, ugly bill. And the protests are only gaining steam. Tomorrow, there are more than 200 Free America protests planned across the country. Organizers say those protests will be focused on freeing the U.S. from billionaires' power, poverty, unlawful orders, and the politics of fear. And those protesters understand how important it is to bring the ugliness of this bill into the light of day. That is the focus now. And so do Democrats in Congress. Republicans tried to hold their final vote on this bill late into the night last night, when literally everybody in the country was sleeping. I mean, debate on the bill began around 3:30 in the morning. But Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries was not going to let them vote in the middle of the night. He used something called the magic minute. It allows the minority leader and a couple of other high-ranking people in Congress to speak as long as he or she wants before there is a final vote. And so Hakeem Jeffries decided to use his magic minute for as long as he possibly could. He ended up speaking for over 8 hours and 40 minutes, breaking the record for the longest House floor speech in history. And in doing so, Jeffries made sure that Republicans would have to vote on this unpopular bill when all their constituents were awake to see it happen.
I rise today in strong opposition to Donald Trump's one big, ugly bill. I feel the obligation, Mr. Speaker, to stand on this House floor and take my sweet time. This reckless Republican budget is an immoral document. This is a crime scene. And House Democrats want no part of it. Vice President said these cuts are immaterial. Are you kidding me? We have a responsibility to stand up for what is right and stand up for what is right in the chamber that we serve in. It's outrageous. It's out of control. And it's completely and totally unacceptable. Extraordinary to me, Mr. Speaker, that you got folks in this town talking about draining the swamp. Guess what? You are the swamp. Got some folks in this town, they go to church and they pray on Sunday. They come to Congress and pray P-R-E-Y.
Maybe the man shouldn't sleep that much in the future. We'll see. Democrats may not have been that effort will need to be absolutely relentless and specific. Just did with this bill. New York Congressman Richard
For 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get
house with confidence. And I'm getting around town, getting
or teetering on the brink and depends fundamentally on Medicaid. And so the Republican reconciliation bill is a catastrophe. You know, when America sneezes, the Bronx gets the flu, and the Bronx is going to be the hardest hit by the $1 trillion cut to Medicaid and the $300 billion cut to SNAP. But I have to say, it's galling for me to see Valadao vote for the bill. He's the only member of Congress who has a higher rate of Medicaid enrollment than I do.
Yeah.
And for him to vote to defund by $1 trillion a program that enrolls 2/3 of his own constituents, to me is the ultimate betrayal. Like, he has no business being in Congress. I barely know the man, but I'm appalled by his behavior.
It is appalling. You fought like hell to prevent this from passing, as did many, many of your colleagues. The question I often get is, like, what can be done? What can be done about all of these people who are going to lose access? Is the answer vote people out in a year and a half, or is there anything that can be done before then?
We need to hold the so-called moderate Republicans accountable in states like New York. Like, we have to ask them, where do your loyalties lie? Do your loyalties lie with the American people, or does it lie with Donald Trump? And consistently, these so-called moderates have chosen Donald Trump over the American people, and we should hold them accountable, and we should drive them out of power. And we need to desperately win back the House in 2026. I'm all in for Hakeem Jeffries' Project 2026, because we have to reverse these cuts. This is a catastrophe for America. It affects everything: food, health care, everything, education.
Well, we just played kind of a bit from every hour of Jeffries. I thought it was very powerful. It brought the bill to be voted. It didn't prevent the bill from passing. How important was him doing that to the caucus?
Look, it just sends a powerful message that we're not going to stand by idly and allow Donald Trump to decimate the social safety net for working people. And I thought his speech was powerful. You know, he spoke about the Declaration of Independence, which is an indictment of tyranny. It's an indictment of an out-of-control king. And Donald Trump thinks that he's a king and that we are his subjects. And Leader Jeffries sent a powerful message that we're not his subjects. America's a democracy, and we're citizens who are able and willing and ready to fight for it.
One of the challenges I think every Democrat and everybody who's against this bill is going to deal with is what I'm just going to call the era of gaslighting that we've fully entered. And I want to play you something that House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said during the debate over the bill this morning, because it is a very good example of that.
If you're disabled on Medicaid right now, you've been crowded out of those programs by people turning down work. Able-bodied people, 35-year-olds sitting at home playing video games. They're going to now have to go get a job. That's right. And by the way, that's a good thing for them. Their mom doesn't want them sitting in the basement playing video games anyway. But now it no longer will be crowding out Medicaid for the truly needy people who deserve it.
We're not trying to, platform Steve Scalise. It's like important for people to hear what the argument is going to be, because we're going to hear that over and over and over and over again. You know how this impacts people, given your district. What is the best pushback and argument against that for people to use?
The truth, the so-called big, beautiful bill is built on a lie, that there are masses of welfare kings and welfare kings who are simply sitting on their couches and playing video games and living off the system. That is a lie. The majority of people on SNAP and Medicaid are working people. And of those who are unemployed, most of them are students or caregivers or those who are homeless or those with temporary disabilities. The number of people who are able-bodied and simply refuse to work is vanishingly small. It's less than 1% of enrollees in both SNAP and Medicaid. The majority of people on SNAP are families with children, senior citizens, and those with disabilities. And in New York State, most of the Medicaid dollars are spent on the elderly and the disabled. The largest category of Medicaid enrollees are children. These are programs that almost exclusively benefit those in greatest need, and defunding these programs will weaken those in greatest need.
This is what people should tell their neighbors and people on social media about this, which is why I want to ask you about it. I just want to change gears for a moment, because you're from New York. You represent the Bronx.
Quite a bit happening in New York.
There's a few things happening. You endorsed Mamdani's opponent, but what's been so interesting for me to watch, and I think so many, is, and you have major policy differences with him, which you can certainly talk about. But you said you committed to work with him if he should win, and you've also been relentless, I would say, in defending and pushing back against these Islamophobic attacks against him. Talk to me about what that means to you, why you've been doing that, and kind of how you see the state of this race moving forward?
Well, look, first of all, unlike Republicans, Democrats accept the results of the election, right? The
Most,
people,
not all, but yes.
But the people of the Democratic primary have spoken, and I accept the results, right? I have profound differences of opinion with Assemblymember Mamdani, but we had a mutually respectful conversation last weekend, and we're committed to building a relationship and continuing the dialogue. But I have a deeply felt obligation to speak out against hate, whether it's anti-Jewish bigotry or anti-Muslim bigotry. And as an example, I'm in the process of drafting a resolution that would condemn Andy Ogles for not only engaging in racist rhetoric about Leader Jeffries, but also in calling upon the Attorney General to deport a Muslim American Democratic nominee simply because he's Muslim American. Like, that kind of bigotry has no place in the United States of America. America is and should be a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy whose creed is e pluribus unum,